Hi, I'm Beena Patel, a physician associate turned spiritual mentor, quantum healer, women's coach, and speaker. Welcome to The Voice That Sees. This podcast is an intimate dialogue on topics ranging from science and spirituality to alternative forms of healing, vulnerable storytelling, the esoteric ancient wisdom, the power of individual transformation, and how it impacts the collective evolution of humanity. Each episode, you will learn how to evolve by shifting your mindset and ways of being, express your vulnerability to heal and transform, and channel your emotions into self-expression, creating a greater impact in the world. Let's continue your journey together. Welcome back to another episode of The Voice That Sees. Today's episode involves an intimate and sensitive topic around something called the father wound, also used in other ways or other terms such as the father complex, which I'll go into later. I feel that this topic is really important because we are seeing on a collective level such a beautiful uprising of what we know to be as the sacred masculine or the divine masculine. And what this means is that the traditional structure or what we have accepted as traditional masculine archetypes, they're coming undone so that more powerful archetypes of what it means to be a sacred masculine, to embody the sacred masculine in today's modern world. What does that mean? And so we're seeing this new archetype of what the sacred masculine is, and it looks different for different men, and it's also an energy that's not gender specific. However, I feel that this is really relatable to more men because it's such a beautiful time to see so many men uncover the passageway into their hearts, their souls, and to no longer fall for what used to be thought of as this is what I need to do to be a man, to be super alpha, to constantly hustle, to constantly be at war with others. We're seeing these archetypes come undone so that a more powerful archetype of what it means to embody the sacred masculine come together. And again, it can look differently for different men. Each man is still unique. However, the underlying theme is that these men are in tune with their sensitivity, their emotions, and they're here for soul expansion. And they know that the only way to do that is by honoring their divinity, their spirituality. For a lot of people, talking about childhood can be challenging. Often we have mixed views of what our childhood could have entailed because many of our stories can sometimes be clouded by some of the negative things that may have happened. And yet there's also a lot of beauty in what we discovered in our childhood years for many of us. This isn't a conversation to blame our parents or caregivers, but rather to open a conversation that invites in a new perspective of going back to our childhood memories and healing some of those aspects within us that may be repressed but are coming up to the surface and are looking to be met with our love at this time where there is this global awakening and the consciousness of humanity is rising so beautifully. So with inner child healing, this is some of the deepest work that I do both personally and professionally. I am a life path 33, and for anyone who doesn't know, in numerology, 3 usually signifies creativity, expression, and also this childlike wonder. And so when you have a life path 33, it's double that energy. And so for me, it's ongoing work of having to meet my inner child with tenderness and love and grace. And it's a beautiful journey. And I invite anyone who comes along my path to learn to embrace their inner child as well. I know a lot of times we think of childlike wonder and doing this healing work with play and doing all the things that we love to do as a child. And that's absolutely vital and important. It's part of the healing journey. And we also get to reparent our inner child and ask him or her questions that can spark a beautiful dialogue and also help us move forward with a greater level of emotional maturity as an adult, meaning asking the inner child, what do you feel right now? What's coming up for you? What do you need? Do you need presents? Do you want to dance? Do you want to sing? Do you want to cry? And then giving that medicine to ourselves. For anyone who has experienced childhood neglect, things sometimes can surface around feeling a certain way towards your mother or your father, sometimes both. And that can be part of your journey. And what happens is that for any child, we needed both parents in order to feel whole, to feel that we were seen and loved as a child. We needed our mother's tender embrace, her nurturing love. And we also needed our fathers to be our protectors, to stand up for us. And if we didn't get these needs met, or we didn't have these needs met by our primary caretakers as a child. Obviously, there are nuances to this, there are variations to this, and it can happen to different degrees to different individuals. But if we didn't receive what we needed from our parents, then sometimes we go through life going through different relationships that kind of mirror those same wounds that we experience in childhood. And what happens is that there's a pattern that forms. For instance, if you have experienced emotional neglect, maybe when you were crying or you're upset, maybe your parents or your caregivers just kind of turned away or ignored you and pretended that nothing was happening, or maybe they told you to stop being emotional. You might notice that maybe you've grown up attracting in emotionally unavailable partners and even friendships. And so the pattern is that when you learned to not be present with your emotions, that is reflected externally and that gets mirrored back to you. And the way to heal and transform that wound is, yes, loving and accepting yourself, and also reparenting the inner child to give yourself what you needed, which is presence, to be seen and felt and understood and heard instead of trying to suppress your emotions or changing your mind prematurely, saying things like, oh, maybe I'm overthinking this, or maybe this is not what this person meant. Instead of minimizing what you feel, you start to allow yourself to feel the full spectrum of whatever you are feeling in any moment. And then eventually coming back into a state of balance and harmony, and then asking yourself what you need and giving yourself that. And maybe giving yourself deep presence in that moment is all you needed. However, sometimes it can also include creating a boundary with someone, creating a boundary with yourself, even. It might mean seeking support. It might mean letting your spirit play. If you feel that you've learned to become too serious with your life, there's an element of playfulness that our spirit yearns for. And so everyone's journey is going to look a little bit different. And it's also a beautiful journey because as we learn to reparent ourselves and tune into this energy of the divine mother and the divine father within, we return to that state of wholeness. And what makes this act so powerful is that we remember that we do have the power to heal and transform ourselves from deep within and also transform our lives. I know there are some people on this planet who may have felt that the experiences that they dealt with in their childhood were simply unbearable, that there's no way that they could go back to those experiences and forgive. What makes this practice so powerful is that you don't even have to speak to your parents. This isn't something I necessarily want to say that I'm advocating for or against. It's just to say, if it's to the point where you're unable to speak to your parents for whatever reason, this practice allows you to go inward to have that conversation with your inner child. And that is powerful. I'm going to rewind and go back a little bit. to share more of a personal transformation in my life and how this relates to healing my own sacred masculine within. Last year, I've spoken about this in multiple episodes on The Voice That Sees. Moved to Costa Rica, went through a huge, what I like to call unearthing, a lot of things coming undone, a lot of things I was discovering about myself. One of the things I was learning was that there were some childhood wounds that I needed to go back to and meet with deeper presence, and that this was important to establishing a sense of self-worth, which was challenging for me for a lot of my life because I was told things like, why did you get a B? Why not the A? And then when I did get an A or A plus, it wasn't this celebration. It was just kind of this expression that conveyed, well, this is normal. You should be getting this. And I've done a lot of healing around this. I've also had very loving, open conversations with my parents, and we've come together as a family in such a beautiful, empowering way. And the journey into that descent was not something I just walked into. It was something I was being drawn into because it's challenging work to go to that place and really look at some of the things that have been buried for so long. And this is just my take on it, but maybe sometimes, not always, but maybe sometimes certain things are easier to work out with our mothers because, and obviously this is not to say that this is everyone's story, but this is my personal account. And so I think maybe sometimes it's easy to work things out with our mothers because women tend to be more in tune with their emotions. Obviously, this is changing today beautifully. However, what has been traditionally conveyed to us is that more women have been in tune with their emotions. And often, as we grow into our adult selves and we have these different, more emotionally mature conversations with our parents, we're seeing things that transpired from a different lens. It's not this accusation of you did this, but I want to talk about this. This is what happened. This is my perspective. This is how I felt. And I'm still feeling a certain way. And then we open up a dialogue. When it comes to something as deep as the father wound, I find that what makes it different is that we're learning to speak to some of the things that happened to men in our lives who may still not know how to speak to their emotions. Again, this is not a generalization because times are changing, but I feel that a commonality amongst a lot of our childhood stories is that we have had fathers who weren't able to necessarily speak up to what they were feeling in the moment. And maybe they were only able to express certain emotions, such as anger. And we couldn't understand why as a child. What we didn't understand is that these were men who learned from their fathers and their fathers and their fathers, and they were told the same thing over and over and over in different versions, but the same theme, which is to man up, to be the protector and do whatever they need to protect and dominate. And that to show any emotions, to cry, to show vulnerability was a sign of weakness, which we know is not true. But this is what so many men have been taught. And this goes against every human's original blueprint. Even women, even the women who have subscribed to certain positions where they believe that in order to be a leader, they need to act more masculine. They need to dress up in a certain way that hides their femininity. And that they too need to compete with others to climb up the ladder, even if it means not being present with their emotions and just sticking to an agenda and getting things done, even though we all know emotions are a part of life. It's part of our human experience, and we do feel things throughout the day. Even when our mind is set on just getting through our to-do list and we have tasks, we still feel throughout the day. So it's impacted men and women. I do want to bring more of a focus to men because I believe that for the last a little over a decade, we've been moving into this beautiful movement of the divine feminine. And we've gone in one direction where more people are learning it's safe to feel, to be creative and intuitive and loving. And it's also about the divine masculine movement. It's unity consciousness. We need both energies, and we need both of these energies in harmony and balance. The masculine energy within us is what helps shape our self-worth and confidence. It's what helps us feel confident as we take different action steps, as we go forth in the world and go after our dreams. Without having this sense of balanced, healthy, sacred masculine, we think that we are here to compete with one another, and that if someone else has something that we want, that means that we can't get it, because we might still be living in this old paradigm of competition, which is not what the pure sacred masculine is about. The sacred masculine that is truly empowered, truly in tune with his divinity, knows that there's abundance for all, and that true power lies not in greed or competition, but in uplifting all beings, knowing there's more than enough to go around. This energy also allows us to feel grounded, solid, stable, and secure in our lives. It's this healthy foundation of holding our presence with loving authority, honoring our connection to nature, to the feminine elements, and honoring brotherhood and sisterhood instead of falling for the shadows, lust, greed, arrogance. There's something really beautiful about the sacred masculine when this energy is in a state of balance from within. It's an energy that calls forth the leader in every single person to rise. I have witnessed it both in myself and other people. It's been a privilege to be around men who hold this balanced authority so powerfully. And I've noticed that when they look at me in my eyes, they're looking into my soul. I can sense that they feel the essence of who I am. And when that happens, there is something in my heart that is being drawn forth. I can feel it. It is palpable. It's a sensation. And it's as though the feminine leader is just, she feels safe and confident to boldly step up and into her authentic power, her authentic expression, not a performative power, not trying to prove anything or defend herself. It's this energy of feeling safe to be who she is and to be fully expressed. And of course, if you see a man who's balanced in both of these energies, he's going to be embodying both. He's going to feel safe to express his creativity, his nurturing energy. And likewise, if you see these balanced traits in a woman, you're going to see a woman who steps up powerfully in her leadership, and she empowers women and men in her community. The sacred masculine leads from the heart. And in order to do that, a man has to feel safe to express what's in his heart, which goes against everything he's been taught in his childhood, both what was modeled to him by society, by perhaps his own father, and also in the media, in what we see in television, social media. We still see, these luxury lifestyles. To be a powerful masculine, you had to exude this certain type of image. And it's changing now. And more men are remembering that the way to discover who they are truly meant to be, especially in the new earth, is by walking through that passageway in their hearts where their souls are safe to express themselves fully, where their souls come alive, where they remember that they are a body and spirit, human and divine. In the Navajo tradition, I love learning about some of these traditions and ancient wisdom from the indigenous tribes. And one of the things I learned from a personal experience, and I am moving into the story now, is going back to this Navajo tradition, understanding of Father Sky and Mother Earth, resembling the masculine and the feminine, and how both elements are meant to work together in order for the earth to be in harmony with the heavens. And this message feels very resonant for our time as we anchor in what many are describing as heaven on earth. So, April of last year, I come back from a women's circle and I feel elevated, joyful, and full of life. And I'm greeted by these two beautiful dogs on the property. And they're guiding me, I'm very in tune with animals, and they're guiding me to the beach, which was right there in front of the property. There was a little stairway that leads from the back of the property straight to the beach. The beach was pretty much my backyard. And as we get to the beach, it's late, it's dark, there's no one there. And I look up to the sky and I see what I can only describe as a cosmic portal. I just don't know how else to describe it. It was huge. It was this big circle in the sky full of stars, and it looked like it was leading somewhere. It looked kind of holographic. And I'm looking around to see if anyone else is witness to this magic right here. And there was no one else. I tried taking a picture. I want to put on the gram. I tried taking a video. It just would not show up on camera as it appeared in the sky. And finally, I had to take a moment to be there, fully present, and acknowledge that that was a moment for me and something was opening up. And without really knowing much about these traditions yet, I just knew that I was about to learn, but I didn't know what I would be learning. Fast forward a couple months later, I start feeling this calling back to Jesus Christ. I'm talking about God a lot more. Again, this is also in a previous podcast episode. If you haven't checked it out, it's Costa Rica and the Calling Back to Jesus Christ. I highly recommend you listen to that one because it also ties in with this piece around the sacred masculine. So I'm starting to talk about God a lot. And even though I've had this deep connection with him for most of my life, for some time with going into the divine feminine work, I started talking about the goddess most of the time and kind of shutting out the idea of God or maybe not speaking to him as much. And as I'm reading these different books and learning about things like womb wisdom and how all of life is interconnected and that Mother Earth can actually be thought of as a goddess, which she is in certain traditions, even in Greek mythology, Gaia, and how Father Sky represents the masculine and what we also know as God, learning about how Earth can resemble form and Father Sky being the mind. And we know that in manifestation, creation, things start in the mind and then they're birthed into our physical reality as it moves through the creative process. And so it doesn't mean that one energy is more important than the other. Both energies have to be unified in order for that potential to be made manifest in physical form. What happens when we steer towards any one side, leaning more towards the masculine or more towards the feminine? What happens is there is usually an imbalance in our lives in some way. Some seasons may require that we go towards one energy more than the other, and we honor that. However, for many of us, when we have some of these shifts that go more towards extreme, it's usually because we're out of touch with our inner world. And the moment we become realigned with what's going on internally and also with our spirit, we make better and more empowering choices, both for us and the collective. So as I'm learning about Father Sky and Mother Earth and starting to feel a deep connection, I have been receiving beautiful transmissions and doing blessing ceremonies with the land in partnership with shamans from Inca medicine school in Peru. And one of the things that I felt a beautiful shift in was when I was learning more about Father Sky and Mother Earth, and we were doing these blessing ceremonies with the land. We did this practice where they did a meditation with me to anchor in my intentions, the vision I was holding for myself and the planet. And then they told me to lie down fully, my full body, back to the earth, lying down on Mother Earth, feeling held by her and supported and rooted into Mother Earth. drawing up that energy, feeling her nurturing embrace, knowing that she's holding me. And what do you think happens when you're lying down on Mother Earth? Your arms are open wide. You're opening yourself up to the sky. The sky is vast, it's infinite. And so, what we're doing when we marry these energies together is we're bringing that infinite potential into our being, and we're rooting it onto the planet through our vessel, our physical vessel. And it's one thing to learn about it, it's another thing to embody it and to feel it in your body. As I started working more with the different elements and creating a relationship with Father Sky, with God, with Goddess, with Mother Earth, speaking to the land, listening to the wisdom of the water, the oceans, the whispers of the wind, noticing different parts of my being, going through periods of dissolution and transmutation while there was fire burning around, whether it was through sage or some type of healthy contained fire around me and smoke, which can also be a part of these rituals and practices that the shamans do. I could feel that there was an inner transformation happening. And this transformation was actually silent. Because if you think about it, it's almost this yes, we are uncovering the previous foundation and rebuilding it from this vantage point of a sacred masculine. And also, what I learned is that in that energy of honoring what it means to be sacred, that transformation doesn't need to be loud. This ties in with Carl Jung, famous psychiatrist, psychotherapist, and he's really popular in the world of psychology. Many people still talk about different things that he taught when it came to understanding the unconscious mind and how we actually have to bring things from the unconscious to the forefront in order to heal our trauma. And something he talks about is the father complex, also the mother complex. However, I'm sticking to the idea of the father complex just to keep in line with the sacred masculine. And so he talks about how these complexes can be either negative or positive. And he discusses that if there's a positive complex, then usually this presents itself in a positive way, meaning feeling a sense of security within, having a healthy sense of admiration and a desire for intimacy, versus if there's a negative father complex, then there can be fear and a lack of trust. And something he also talked about is that when we're healing something as personal as the father complex, what he discusses is that a lot of times when we are healing something as deep as the shadow of a negative father complex, then what can happen is that we spend time in solitude and in stillness as some of those repressed memories come to the surface. And what's powerful is that as we are shifting and transforming and reparenting this part of ourselves, a lot of the transformation occurs in silence and in moments where we pause. For anyone who has done inner child healing of any kind, you know that usually in periods where you're doing that work, you're more tender. And you may notice that people around you are more tender as well because they're also experiencing shifts within themselves as you're experiencing shifts in your own life. I thought that was very powerful as I've been learning more about him and his work in understanding the psychology of what happens to children as they grow up, how adults operate when they've had some of these childhood dynamics play out. And so this year, I noticed that something much greater than myself kind of shut the borders down, meaning I was almost forced to look at things that I didn't want to look at. Even though me and my family have healed through so much, it was more personalized. It was like this time we're reparenting without even looking at my parents really. Yeah, we can look at them to understand different patterns, what I may have adopted from them based on things that I saw repeatedly in childhood. However, this time there was more focus on my own inner world. What was I still moving through? What reality was I creating by still living in some fragments of the past? And as I started to meet these deeper aspects, one of the things I was practicing was pausing whenever I felt triggered. And this isn't always easy because sometimes in the moment when we get triggered, it could be so easy to pull up social media and create a super activating post while we're moving through the emotion and make it sound super empowering, even when we haven't even had the breakthrough yet. Or we can immediately project on the other person and just accuse them and make it their fault. This time I wanted to practice not being a slave to the mind and honoring that peace is possible in every moment. So I would pause and try to listen more and be in moments of stillness. And what came up a lot this year was loneliness. Because as you're spending more time in solitude, you're spending more time with yourself and you navigate the full spectrum of human emotions. And that can include anything from feeling joy for no reason to feeling angry, to feeling sad, to feeling peaceful, to feeling defeated, to feeling lonely at times. And I think loneliness can be challenging for most of us because we're used to being around people. We're used to putting our energy into motion and constantly doing things. And when we feel lonely, we may try to bypass going into the full depth of it. We might pull up social media or write an email or do something, start cleaning something to kind of avoid meeting ourselves in that intimate place. What I learned is that if we pause and breathe through those moments, without having to rush it, without having to try to figure it out, as in, why do I feel this way? Just being with it. Eventually, our presence, our love, and our acceptance wraps around that pocket or place of emptiness and fills it with our own love. It can take some time, and it's okay. It's part of the journey. And when we do that, we realize we moved through it. We're on the other side. We're balanced again in terms of our emotions, and we can make empowering decisions again. And so, how this ties in is that as I learned how I was showing up in the world from that previous place of the wounded masculine, which I too had within me, is that whenever I felt charged emotions or even lonely, I would make subpar decisions, meaning texting someone just to not be with my feelings, making space for friendships that didn't really see me fully just for the sake of having something to fill my time and schedule and feeling needed and basing my worth on feeling needed by others. Whereas when I started to come back into balance, which also met my own sacred feminine as well, I learned that there is a powerful authority within me. And this powerful authority wants to lead from a place of compassion, empowering people to be bold in their love and their compassion, in their ability to change the world for the better by becoming that change themselves. And that I didn't have to show up aggressively or in constant go, go, go mode. And that loneliness is very sacred. And each time we allow ourselves to be immersed that deeply within us, yes, we come out on the other side feeling powerful, feeling more whole. And we also become more in tune with our sensitivity. We become more perceptive of our needs. And we also own our self-worth to a higher standard. Because if we can meet ourselves in that place, hold ourselves, be the protector we needed, and protecting from a place of, I've got you, we're going to move through this, rather than putting up walls and barriers. As we create that sense of safety and security from within, The feminine feels safe to express all the emotions and to let herself be held and supported. It's interesting how different traditions come back to this principle, whether we want to call it masculine, feminine, yin and yang, father sky, mother earth, so many different spiritual and native traditions speak to this. And we can understand why, especially at such a time as this on our planet. We're understanding why so many systems haven't been working, how many people have suffered from burnout. We often say women's bodies are cyclical, which is true. And I would argue even men's bodies are not meant to just be going at it. And the more that they become comfortable with their feminine aspects and spend time in nature and learn to nurture their own feminine within, they also honor their need to rest and to be and not always be in doing mode. Our planet needs balance. Humanity needs balance. It's no longer about having such strict gender roles. As we become more fluid and less attached to labels and constructs, there's more space for understanding. There's more space to understand that we are interconnected on so many levels. I believe inner child healing by going within and reparenting our divine mother and divine father is beautiful and a very important part of our work, especially for anyone who feels called on a leadership path. Because what we often find is that when we're up against something where we feel resistance or a block, usually it's because the inner child doesn't feel safe to move beyond whatever the fear or the doubt is. And it's necessary to clear that so that we can move into our next level, know that it's safe for us to rise and to receive good things. And what I think is so beautiful and quite extraordinary about some of these traditions with honoring our elements, Father Sky, Mother Earth, is that it shows us, yes, we are connected human to human, and we're also connected through cosmic consciousness. This is larger than life. When I saw this portal up in the sky, something came over me and I felt held in a way that you just can't really feel with another person on a physical level. This is soul. This is something that expands our spirit. And when we feel this connected to the cosmos, to our universe, we relate to people differently because we understand that our time on this planet is finite, even though our souls are on an eternal journey. And so what this means is that we stop taking things so seriously. We learn to be a little bit more lighthearted. We start to let joy lead our lives. I have been seeing rainbows a lot. And I am in a beautiful season of gorgeous blessings. And I want to spread that energy for anyone who feels that they might need it. Rainbows also are an important part of understanding these ancient traditions because many people among the indigenous believe that the rainbow is a guardian to Father Sky and Mother Earth. And something I've also learned about in my own journey with Inca medicine school is honoring the red path of the rainbow, which means learning to be in integrity with the highest values on the spiritual path and using that in our humanity, in our everyday interactions, doing what is right and not just right for us, but right for everyone, leading with compassion and love, universal love, and being good to all beings, including the animal and plant kingdoms, creating this sense of harmony and unity on our planet, which is so needed right now. After our recent solar eclipse last month, this is a powerful season of eclipses we're moving through because we're seeing this shift to faith and spirituality and mysticism and understanding how we are connected on multiple levels, extending beyond this earthly existence. And what happens is that when we move into more of the spiritual aspects of our lives, there's less of this concrete sense of reasoning and rationalizing, and there's more of learning to trust our intuition and being guided by unseen forces, universal principles. They're not necessarily tangible, we just know they exist. And as I was navigating this moment again, feeling into the loneliness and letting myself descend all the way into that moment, not doing what I would normally do, which is call someone immediately to speak about it or go on my phone, social media, or go straight into creation mode and create something. I wanted to allow myself to descend into it. And when I got to that place where it just felt unsettling to go any further, I walked outside and I sat down and I looked up at the sky and I said something along the lines of, I'm ready to be held. Hold me. I'm ready to be held. And the tears came up and I cried. And it was like this cosmic release. I felt as I was looking up at the sky, I could feel the vastness within myself in that moment. And it's probably because I let myself go there, a place I had been avoiding for some time in my life. And when I went to that place, what that moment was teaching me is that I am held in that moment, in those moments of trekking into the unknown within my own being, the parts of myself I haven't yet discovered that were safe to go there. And a few moments later, after I felt the release and I cried, I saw three pairs of birds fly, one after the other. It looked like they were part of the same group, but it was very distinct. They were pairs side by side flying. And to me, what it signified was that I'm never alone. We are never alone. We're in partnership with these higher forces, with Father Sky, and also with Mother Earth. And those pairings could also represent Father Sky and Mother Earth working in partnership, in unison with one another. And as we do that, we remember we are whole. We're never alone. And if we choose to do it alone, meaning masculine without the feminine, feminine without the masculine, we can't do much good for this planet. Both energies are needed. And so we don't have to deny any aspects of ourselves. You can be in a leadership position as a woman and hold on to your compassion. In fact, compassion is needed more than ever. You can be a man who opts for leadership in non-traditional leadership roles. It does not have to be a CEO of a big company. There are men running men's circles and even doing things like providing mentorship for young men, helping them get connected to the land, to nature. These are very beautiful, sacred journeys that we can go on as we stretch the idea of what it means to be a human, to be a leader, to be a midwife of the new earth. And when we allow ourselves to become connected to these cosmic energies, we remember that we don't even have to do this work on our own. We're held and we are being transformed by the cosmos itself. And the cosmos is infinite, which means our own expansion and transformation is infinite if we let it be. What you'll find is that as you allow this new and healthier foundation of the sacred masculine to come forth, it impacts every area of your life, including your business, your career, your relationships. You show up in a more empowering way, more confident. You own your self-worth to a higher degree. You have healthier boundaries. And this foundation of safety comes from deep within. It's not based on achievements or anything external outside of you. It's not based on validation. It's not based on how many likes you got on your post on Instagram. It's not based on what someone said about your idea, whether they liked it or not. It's not based on the new job position you just got. It's not based on anything external. It's based on your own inner foundation, knowing you are worthy just because you exist. And it's a beautiful prayer and intention I'm weaving onto the planet at this time, that more people awaken to the sacred masculine within, all men, all women, so that the future children of this planet, and even the children who exist now, that they're witness to what it means to honor the healthy masculine, the healthy feminine in balance, what it means to have healthy partnerships, what it means to allow our businesses to be used as a force for good, for our clients, for our partners, for people all over this planet, so that we allow this infinite potential that moves through us to be used in such miraculous ways to preserve wildlife, to preserve our oceans, to protect nature. Nature's already powerful. She can regenerate. She can do her thing. And she still deserves our respect. As we balance these energies and come back to unity, to wholeness within, we see the wholeness of humanity. And we remember that as we choose to rise, all of humanity, the entire collective consciousness, rises with us. And the difference is that before, whereas we may have been scrambling and doing whatever we need to do to compete and rise by stepping on others and trying to get to the top without allowing others to move there with us. In this new energy, this beautiful sacred masculine, along with the sacred feminine, we know it doesn't mean anything to get to the top if we can't be at the top with our brothers and sisters with us. What would it look like for you to awaken this beautiful sacred masculine within yourself? And can you let yourself be patient as this beautiful aspect starts to blossom within your being? It's a process, it's a journey. And as you connect to Father Sky, to God, to the masculine, what you'll find is that you have deeper reverence for the masculine and the feminine. And this is our return to unity consciousness. And the future is unity. And the future is now. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Voice That Sees. Please be sure to check out more episodes every other Tuesday on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. For additional content, you can follow me on Instagram at The Yoga Movement and YouTube at The Yoga Movement NYC. You can also check out my coaching programs and unique offers on my website at theyogamovementnyc.com to help support your individual and personal transformation. Until next time, be you and be well.